Hi, this is Todd with Power Driven Diesel. In this video, we're going to walk you through the installation of our Ultimate Towing Compound Turbo System. This is a rather involved process, but not something you can't do in your garage at home. Get a buddy with you, plan a weekend, and you can have a twin turbo system installed in your truck. We're going to start with the manifold being already on the engine. So first thing you do is take off your turbo and manifold. Once that's gone, you put on a new manifold. Pretty simple. There's 12 bolts that go in. On this particular manifold, I wanted to show you real quick. These are locking nuts and bolts that go on these manifolds. We also have locking nuts that go on the turbos. Sometimes these will vibrate loose, and with these things, they're locked in position with these tabs, so they cannot back out. I've had many bolts back out on me over the years. That's when I found this company who makes these for the Cummins engine. I was really excited, so we offer these with it. On the video we're going to shoot, it's going to have the standard hardware. You can use either one. I just wanted to show you an option of an upgraded fastener, which I personally use on my trucks because I hate getting in and losing gaskets and having this thing blow black smoke all over my engine bay when it gets loose. So I use locking bolts, but you do not have to. A lot of people don't. Just want to show you the option. Let's go on to the Okay, so on this truck we've taken the cab off. We really wanted to have good access for viewing so you can see everything that's going on here. The first thing you can see is the manifold's installed. These bolts torque to 35 foot-pounds. Make sure you torque them because if they're loose, they'll come out. Like it may come out anyway, but make sure you're at 35 pounds on the bolts that go in the head. This is the first piece you have here. This is our little bracket that ties the large turbo in to the engine block. And so as it comes, right now it's loose because we're going to have some adjustment on that. And this goes in the number around cylinder number 5. That's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on the bottom. 4 and 5 on the bottom is where this piece here goes. Use the same bolts. There's no different bolt for each one of these. Just put them in, torque those down to 35 foot-pounds. Okay, I want to talk to you about now oil drains. This is your stock oil drain boss cast into the block. If you have a storm block or a 24 valve block or a common rail, you're lucky because you have 2 of them. There's another one right here. This block is the older one, so it doesn't have it. So what you have to do on these older ones is you have to somehow get a drain in your oil pan. On this particular engine, we took the pan off and welded a bung here for it. Sometimes you're not able to take the pan off and weld that, so what we send with the kit is one of these guys here. This is a -10 fitting by a 1/4-inch pipe thread. Oh, excuse me, 1/2-inch pipe thread. This is the worst part of the whole install, to be honest with you. What you gotta do is you gotta poke a hole in your pan here. Some people will drill, some people will get a swedge or something and just hammer a hole through it, just poke a hole and hammer it through, and they'll get it just smaller than this 1/2-inch pipe thread, and they'll actually thread this in or jam it in somehow and then JB weld it. It's kind of hokey, but without taking your pan off, you don't have a lot of options. So people have been doing it this way for a long time with this little 1/2-inch pipe thread, poke a hole in the pan, kind of thread it in there and JB weld it, and it does work and it works well. So those are your 2 options. You either got to take off your pan and weld a bung, or punch this in there and JB weld it in. So that's what you got to do, and that is the worst part of the install. If that oil drain in the pan is beyond your capabilities, but you think you can take the oil pan off, we do offer a brand new oil pan with that bung welded in here. We can ship one to you, so all you have to do is simply switch your oil pan. So that is an option if you want to go that route. Still not super easy, it's time consuming, but it's maybe a little bit easier than trying to punch a hole in your side of your thing, so up to you. Alright, so this is a small turbo of the Ultimate Towing Compound Kit. This is a K27, and as it comes to you, you may have to do some maneuvering of this guy here. This is a compressor housing. And once you get this put on the exhaust manifold, this may have to be clocked. To do that, you simply loosen these little bolts right here. There's 6 of them, and it'll loosen these tabs. Then you can rotate this around. Now, one of the reasons I chose this turbo is it has a rubber O-ring on the inside of this so it doesn't leak. So when you loosen this, it's still pretty stiff, but once you loosen them, you can clock it and get it right. And once you get it right, then tighten these back up. Also, you need to put in the oil drain flanges. This is the thing that sends oil out. This is the oil drain flange right here. What that is, this one comes pre-assembled, some of them don't. But there's a fitting right here. This is a 1/2-inch by -10 fitting that goes into this flange here, and these two bolts go into the K27. There's also an oil drain flange gasket. I like to put a little bit of blue Loctite on these bolts as I put them into the oil drain bolt holes, and so do that on both turbos. And also on the top turbo on this one, there's a little, you'll get this in your kit or something similar to it. This is a metric fitting that goes, this is your oil feed, it's a -4 AN, so that goes in the top of your turbo or your oil inlet. Where are we here? Anyway, very simple, just put it in there, get her tight. There'll be an O-ring or a crush washer or something like that. If you do, this is much easier to do before it's on the truck. So put your oil fittings in and out on both turbos before you put them on the truck. All right, next step, simply put on that turbo. This one's already clocked correctly, but at this point you'll put it on and you want it, you know, facing pretty much straight across, maybe a touch down, but pretty much straight across is the orientation. Once we get this in place, we'll show you the correct orientation. All right, so you're going to want to get these nice and tight. You can reuse the nuts that came with your off your stock turbo. They're actually pretty good. We usually reuse them. And then on this, you can see it's not exactly perfectly level. It has down a little bit. You can have it perfectly level and it'll work just fine. The reason we have it down a little bit is it'll interfere with the padding or the heat, the insulation of your hood if you don't have it down just a little bit. If you don't have insulation in your hood, it's not going to matter. And so this is pretty much the correct orientation of the turbo. Okay, in your K27 box, you'll have a bunch of different gaskets that come with it. The one you're going to use is this guy here. It's pretty rare. This is pretty cool. This is a gasket for your exhaust side on the back. Most turbos don't have this. You don't even have to use this. You can use just a V-band flanges like most people do. But since it comes with a gasket, we're going to use it. So find the gasket that fits here, and it's going to go in the hot pipe, which we're going to put on right now. So this is a pipe that routes the exhaust energy to the big turbo. So we're going to put this on kind of loose right now. Just kind of get it in place. We're going to do our final tightening on that clamp in a little bit. So this gasket also comes in that bag of gaskets. This is a gasket that goes between the manifold and the turbo. We provide a divided one because the turbo is a divided style turbo with a divider right here. But keep this one because it doesn't have to be divided. This one is perfectly fine for the turbo. So if for some reason you ruin that gasket or something, you have a backup right here, which is in that big bag of gaskets. This is a T3 gasket between the turbo and the manifold. Okay, so what we're doing now is we're putting the bolts to hold in the large turbocharger. This is still loose. You can still move it around. Easier to do it now. You'll notice we're going to show you these bolts go through this bracket we put on earlier. So this bracket we put in earlier, put these bolts through it. Everything's still loose, and when we're all done, we're going to get nice and tight. With your large turbo, you're going to get this guy here. This is a gasket for the same thing. This goes between its manifold or its hot pipe and the turbo. You may have an oil gasket drain seal here, and make sure to put that on. If it's on you should have already put this on your turbo before it goes on the truck. But if you didn't, make sure it's on there. No, they might, but okay, so I'm going to give you a little assembly tip here. You'll notice we have the cab offer to speed this thing up, and we can put the whole turbo in. And you can do the whole turbo in this whole kit, obviously, with the cab on. We do it all the time. It may be easier. There's 4 nuts here that hold the turbo into this turbine housing. Sometimes I'll simply put the turbine housing on first because it's a lot easier without this weight here. And then I'll put the cartridge in and put these 4 bolts in. It's kind of a pain to tighten these up in the frame, but it can be done. So you just decide what's easier for you. Either put the whole turbo in as one. If you have a friend here to help you hold it up, it's pretty easy. Or take these 4 bolts out, pull it out, put the turbine housing on first, and then put this back in.
With these bolts, it's really important to use a balled Allen just because of the angles you're at. It's kind of interesting. So you can kind of get out in a lot of different angles, as you can see. And as you saw, as I was tightening down, it's kind of crucial to do that. These bolts are also tightened to 35 foot-pounds, just the same as the manifold bolts.
So on these particular nuts he's doing, I don't think I've ever been able to reach a torque wrench in when it's in the engine bay. Maybe you'll be able to, some extensions and stuff. If you can't reach a torque wrench in there, just get them really, really tight. Like muscle them up, get them good and snug. Now we're going to tighten the bracket that we very first put on under the manifold. Now that this is now tight, we're going to push everything towards the engine, as tight as you can towards the engine, and then tighten up all those other remaining, there should be 2 more bolts on the bracket. Tighten those up and it'll be nice and solid. Once that's done, tighten up your top clamp here. And on this, you're going to want to have some feel. You don't just gun it because you'll strip the nut. So get it on there and get it tightish. Now you want it good and tight, but you can easily strip these. Just get them good and snug. So this side is still loose, so we can get our stuff in here. Then we're going to tighten this up. You're going to want to have this loose to get your perfect angle for your interstage pipe, which we're going to put on here in a few minutes. But the turbine housing itself is rock solid with the engine now, and it's not going to move on you. All right, at this point, we're going to put the downpipe in. This is part of your responsibility as the owners. You're going to have to figure out how to hook the downpipe up to the exhaust. The downpipe is going to be a 4-inch outlet, and you're going to have to somehow hook that up to your existing exhaust system or put in a new exhaust system, whatever you choose to do. But once this is good and tight and in place, you can go ahead and put the downpipe on and go from there. Again, don't hammer it home with your impact. Finish up with your hands so you don't strip the nut. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put oil lines. There is a fitting right here on your stock truck. You're going to have to take that thing out. It's just a little, I forget the socket size. Do you know the socket size?
15 millimeter?
I believe it's a 15 millimeter.
17.
Take that out, maybe 17, I forget offhand. And replace it. We're going to send you 2 fittings. One's an 1/8-inch pipe thread. This is also, there's a plug right here on yours. There's a plug right here. You want to take that out. So this is an 1/8-inch pipe thread. Put some sealant on that thing and put that one in this guy here. It's -4 by 1/8-inch pipe thread. You want to be careful with your sealant that you don't get it into your line. If you're using Teflon tape, make sure it's not clear below the fitting. It's above the fitting, so your fitting's below it. Or a good thread sealant, just make sure it doesn't get in the actual hole. It's in the threads only. This is a metric fitting that replaces that stock fitting you just pulled out. This is a M12 by 1.5 or something like that. It's on the bag, and that goes in your spot here.
Here you can see the oil drain in the block. Here there's usually a 90 that comes out of this hole, and it is a pain to get out of here. So you can try and get in there with a pair of channel locks. I mean, you just got to sit there and work it for 5 to 10 minutes. I've had to pull probably 10 of these, and no matter what you do, it takes forever. So just plan to spend about 20 minutes trying to pull it, but you'll eventually get it. As soon as you get it turning, put a screwdriver in the end of it, and you can get it turning more and more, and it will eventually come out. To replace that, we have this fitting. It's just in the end of this hose, has the same -10 connectors that all the rest of them do. And it will just slip in this hole. Of course, a little lubrication always goes a long way, and it will just slip right into this hole. We're going to use a 1-inch wrench. These I got from Harbor Freight. They're really, really cheap to get, and they're really, really good for this job. They're really short and easy to get on the lines. Next, we're going to install the bottom hose. I would have started on the turbo doing this job with the cab on, but it really doesn't make that much of a difference. Next, we'll install our top lines. I mark each one of these, top and bottom, because a lot of the time they're really, really close in size, so you don't confuse them. To tighten these up, it's a 9/16. And of course, with aluminum fittings, you just want to get them snug, not over tight. They'll strip out really easy.
All right, now we're going to install the elbow on the K27. This is a forward discharge elbow. It's going to mate up to the charge pipe going to the intercooler. There is an O-ring that goes in this elbow. You want to make sure that it's in there. Get it sealed up perfectly. Leave it a little loose so you can adjust it with your pipe and get it perfect angle. There we go. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and put on the interstage pipe. Once we get it all lined up perfect, we're going to go ahead and tighten the nuts on the big turbo so everything is rock solid. There is a V-band on this particular model. There's an O-ring. You make sure that's on there if that's what you have. Other turbos systems will have a boot here, so just depending on what you have, either way you got to hook up that connection.
Now I'm installing the 3x4 boot, just pushing it on to the interstage pipe, and then we will push the interstage pipe over. And this is why we have the turbo loose, so we can clock the turbo while we are putting this on. And once it's fully seated against the turbo, it should be set and ready to go. Then we'll put our clamps on.
Now, these clamps we provide with this kit are awesome. I've ruined and stripped so many of these clamps that I looked for really good ones. These ones have what's called a barrel nut. I'm going to show you real quick why I like this so much. Instead of like a normal tiny nut, this nut has 3 times the thread engagement. You see how long that is? You probably can't see. There's 3 times the length of thread engagement, and this actually has 3 times the torque capacity. So these you can run with your gun, and you won't strip them out. What I like to do is I pretty much take these until the springs are touching each other. That's how tight I run them. Till the spring is pretty much all the way collapsed and touching the coils all the way around, and it takes a lot of torque to get under there, but I've never stripped one of these bolts. Not saying it can't happen, but a lot less likely than another one. At this point, now we can tighten the big turbo.
It is okay if the turbo is not perfectly straight up and down with the oil inlet and outlet. There is a little bit of play in there from the factory you're allowed.
Again, on these clamps, you're going to want to tighten them with your hands. These V-band clamps. They don't have that super long barrel nut.
And you can see I don't use a long ratchet for this job. I'm using just a short little one, so I cannot over torque them. But it's not necessary.
Okay, I want to talk about the boots now that we use in our kits. The boots we use in our kits are awesome. I've blown up about every brand of boot that there is, and the ones we use here I have not. I've had these things up to over 150 pounds of boost on my race truck, and they've not failed me. I like the fact they're so thick, and they handle the heat real well. All of our boots in our kits are straight. One of the weak points of a silicone boot is an angle. If you have a 90-degree angle or a 45, that's going to be the spot that's going to blow up. The straights are much, much more reliable. So every boot in our kit is straight, and we do that for a reason. So anyway, these boots, ultra reliable, and the reason I use them. Having a straight boot is so important. We actually put a straight boot going into the intercooler as well. That is the #1 boot that's going to fail on any system, is that 45-degree angle going into the intercooler. and we'll show you have to do a little bit of modifications to your truck to make it work, but in the end it's well worth it because that boot will not fail, where a 45-degree one that comes with truck and most kits will be your first failure. So at this point you're going to put on the, from here now you're going to put on the one that goes in the intercooler down here. Once you have this one in line, get this where you want to be, and then tighten up your elbow here. Okay, so here's the modification I was talking about earlier. In order to get the straight boot out of the intercoolers, which I think is very worthwhile doing, you have to trim a little bit of this fender here. And you don't lose any protection because the plastic part remains. This is the protection of the elements going into your engine bay. This part here is not necessary, so you have to just trim out a little bit here and coming up into here. Just cut a little bit, you can use tin snips, a grinder, whatever you got to do. Just cut away a little bit of this metal to make room for this pipe that comes out right up here. This is the driver's side, so this truck's going to get the Cobra Kai pipe, but you do the same thing on both sides. Just cut a little bit of a piece out here to make room for the straight boot. You'll be very glad you did it when you don't blow up pulling that trailer up a hill. Okay, so here's the view of the passenger side. They're the same on both sides, but here's the cut you got to make. Come up here, cut this out, and then down through here. This is, you'll see, we move some stuff out of your way here so you can get a real good view of the cut you make to make clearance for this intercooler pipe. One thing you may have to modify is your radiator hose. On some trucks we have to, and some trucks we don't. If this interferes, what you do is take this off and cut this back however far you have to bring this a little bit farther forward to make room for this pipe. Okay, now let's put on the air cleaner. We're about done with this thing here. First put on the 90-degree boot. And put in that piece there. And the filter.
And this color is just one of the many hundreds of colors you can choose from.
It's true. Okay, that's pretty much how you put in the twin turbo setup. Very similar for different kits. You know, whether you do the larger S400 series turbos, it's pretty much designed the same way. And so that's the install of the standard kit. Well, I hope that video gave you the confidence you need so you can install this twin turbo system on your truck. Visit us at powerdrivendiesel.com. If you have any questions about this, call us at the shop. Our number here is 435-962-9555. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and you'll get these videos as soon as they're uploaded. Thanks a lot.